If you're looking to turn some of your finished cross-stitch pieces into greeting cards, but you're not sure where to start, then I have just the tutorial for you. Especially if you like a clean, modern style. Hi there Stitchy friends, I'm Kat from Cat and Lily, bringing you the best tips, tricks and tutorials so you can get the most joy from your stitching. Now, I think that sending greeting cards to your friends and family is one of the nicest things that you can do with your cross-stitch. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Today I'm going to show you my favourite way to finish a piece into a cross-stitch greeting card. I'll give you the basic tutorial and then I'll give you 3 ways that you can customise it and put your own spin on it. Now I'm going to be using some of my patterns from my shop because I mostly design small patterns and they're great for using for greeting cards, but obviously you can use any patterns for this. Okay, we're ready to get started making our greeting card. And I'm going to be using this cute pattern set. It has 4 little cactus designs in it, so they're all perfectly sized for greeting cards. So to get started, you'll obviously need a blank card, so you could buy these pre-made. This is a 5-inch card, or you could cut a piece of card to size, score and fold it yourself. Now I like to use craft card, but you could use any colour that you like. Obviously you're going to need some completed stitching, so here's one of the cactus designs that I've done. You need a small additional piece of white card. You'll see where that comes in later. I'm going to be using PVA glue, but you could use double-sided tape here if you preferred. I've got my fabric scissors, so I only use these for cutting fabric. I've got a pencil. I've got a ruler. And a fairly largish needle. I've got a size 24 needle here. And this is what we're going to be making. So this technique is called fraying and patching, or just simply patching, because it basically involves fraying the edges of your fabric piece and making a patch that you put onto the front of your card design. So the first thing we need to do is decide what size we want to cut this piece of fabric down to fit onto our card blank. So you could either go with the same number of squares on each side and just count the number of squares out and cut there, or you could make it into a square. So I'm going to go for a square on this one, and I would pop a ruler on and just see roughly how much space I'd like. So that feels like a nice amount of space to that side and here, so that's about 8.5 centimetres. So let's go ahead and roughly mark that with the pencil. And I'm probably going to do it kind of by eye and then neaten it up as I go. So if I start, I think about here. So if I count from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 seems quite good actually. So let's go 10 and I'm going to mark on the 11th one. So I'm going to count the same on this side. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I'm going to mark the 11th space. So I'm now going to follow this down so I can see where the edge is. And then I'm going to take my fabric scissors and trim along that line I'm actually going to trim. So I've marked here, but I don't want that pencil line on my stitching, so I'm cutting one in from where I made my pencil mark, just to make sure that I've cut that pencil mark off. So same on this side. So I'm just cutting along a line of the holes. Obviously this is a little bit easier on Ada because you've got a nice line of holes to go along. You can still do it with linen or even weave, it's just a little bit harder. Okay, so I've done, that looks quite good spacing there. And I've done that because that's the design is tallest in that direction. So now I've got that, and I know that that is just about 8.5 centimetres. I want to make the same distance on this way round. So I'm looking to see where my design is widest. It pretty much is where these bits are. So I know I need about 8.5 centimetres. I've now got about 2.5 this side, and then 1, 2.5. Yeah, that's going to be about right. Obviously, but this time around what I'm probably going to do is, just to get it exact, is to cut it a bit bigger than I need and then double count it and trim it down again. So I'm going to mark it. I'm just going to trim off a little bit, and then I can count and get it exact. So I never assume I'm going to get this direction right the first time. I'll just trim some, and then, okay, so I'm about 1 centimetre or so off. So I'm going to need to take about 3 squares off each side maybe, but obviously I want it to be even again. So I'm going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I've got 19 to that side. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So I've got 2 extra squares on this side than this side. So I know that I need to take off about 1 centimetre, which is about 6 or 7 stitches. So I need to take 1, 2, 3, 4. If I take 5 off this side, 3 off that side. So now I know they're going to be even on each side, because I had 2 extra squares this side. So now I can even it up with this side. In fact, before I snip that, let me check. That's actually only 8 centimetres. So I probably don't want to take that much off. That's actually going to be too much. So that's fine. What we'll do, let's just take 3 squares off that side. And 1 square off this side. So now I've evened that up. I should have the same number of squares either side. And about 8.7 centimetres. So it's still a tiny bit more in that direction than that one. I think it needs to be 1 more each side. Of course, it doesn't matter if it isn't exactly square. And when you finish, you can always go back and check if you're now not happy with the size. If you think it should be a bit smaller, you can trim some more off of there. Now, this is where I did get a bit happy, and I have got some pencil marks left on here. So I could get a rubber and just actually rub those out, but I think we're going to lose them when we do the next section with the fraying anyway. So now I'm going to fray the edges, and this is where you need a needle, and I find it easy to do with a slightly larger needle. So as I said, this is a size 24. And I'm going to push my needle into a hole. The idea is we're going to be taking 1 block of threads away from the edge. So I'm going to push my needle in there and just pull it away. Come a couple of block squares down, and again I'm just going to use the needle to pull that out. Now once you've done that, you can grab hold of it and the whole thing just comes away. So again, on each side, just pull a small bit away with the needle, and then you can pull the whole thing. Now I like to fray just 1 block like this, so that's my finished piece. You can go and pull another block away if you want to give yourself a larger fringed edge. It actually gets quite difficult if you pull a second block away. That first block comes away really easily. It's much harder to pull out the second block. Okay, so now we want to attach our patch onto the front of the card. And here's where the little square of white's going to come in. Because you can see, if I pop this on here, because I've got this on the craft card, it's sort of showing through a little bit through the fabric holes. Now if I slide a piece of white card underneath, you can immediately see that just makes that design just pop off the card a little bit and looks really nice. So I'm going to attach the white piece behind the fabric. Now this is where I am going to use some PVA glue for this. Now obviously that means that yes, there's some glue on the back of my stitching, but I'm just going to keep it around the edge. And for greeting cards, I'm not quite sure how much I'm going to worry about putting a bit of glue on here. As I said, you can use double-sided tape for this, but it won't be any better than glue for not discolouring the fabric. In fact, I've had double-sided tape that's caused more discoloration on fabric than PVA glue, so that's why I tend to use glue. So what I would do is just use a really tiny amount. It's only got to keep it in place. So you can put it just around the edge. I like to smear it out with my finger, and then I've got glue on my finger, so I'll just wipe it on my hand. So I've got the tiniest bit of glue possible, and I'm going to put that in place on the patch. And you can see I've made it, sized it, so that it covers the patch but not the fringe, because I want that fringe to be sticking out and visible. So that's my patch ready now, and I can take my glue again, and this time I can add a bit extra. And again, you can use double-sided tape here. The reason I like glue for this is that it gives you a lot, I can wiggle this around for a bit before it dries. So I can make sure that I've got that nicely centred. If you use double-sided tape, once you stick it down, it's stuck. So it can be a little bit trickier to use. If you want a little bit more dimension at this point, then you could use sticky foam pads underneath rather than using PVA glue. And that's your finished product. So here's the one we started with. So I've now got two really cute little cactus greeting cards. And if you want to leave them like that, that's absolutely fine. But if you want to add a little something extra, then let's take a look at 3 ways that you can do that. So the first way that you can customise your greeting cards is by adding a sentiment. So I've used a different design here and a slightly different shaped card, and I've got a sentiment. I've used a rubber stamp for this, but you could print something really similar using your home computer, and I've popped a couple of little sticky foam pads on the back just in the middle. So I find it just gives a nice little dimension to it. So if I take the backing off of here, and all you're going to do is, I'm going to bend it slightly. I'm sort of going to run it through my fingers like this, so that the greeting is now slightly curved. So when I stick it down, just going to put it at a little bit of a jaunty angle over the edge like that. And that's all it needs. It just needs those couple in the middle, and then we've bent it so it will just sit there, add a little finishing touch to your card. So the second way you can really easily customise this design is to add a strip of pattern paper. So you could add it horizontally like I've done here, you could add a vertical strip, or you could add a square that's slightly bigger than your design. Now I buy pads of pattern paper to use for this, but you could use pretty wrapping paper, and you only really need a small piece. So if you just stick that to the card before you add your patch, and you might be able to see here, I've actually added this one design with sticky foam pads. So it just gives it a little bit more pop off the card, just for a bit of extra dimension. So the third and final variation here is to add some ribbon or twine. And I have a slightly bigger design and a slightly bigger card. This is a 6-inch card. And just so you can see, I've frayed 2 blocks on this one. So you've got a slightly longer fringe on it. And I'm going to add some twine. I just want to add some twine down the side. Now you could add it going across that way, or you could add it this way. And I have a little trick for adding the twine that I'll show you. So I'm going to figure out where I want to put it. Here should be about fine. I want it just to overlap the edge of the stitching. So if I'm going to do this, I often make the patch a little bit bigger just to give me room to put that twine down the side. So what I'll do And the reason I like doing it vertically is that then you can attach your twine on the inside. And here's a little trick. Because the twine's quite chunky, I like to use a cocktail stick, and I'm going to comb through the twine at the end so that it separates the strands. And then I'm going to attach it just with a small sticky dot. It's just a sticky label. So that's not going to look too untidy on the inside. So you can flatten that down. So it's now flatter than it was if I hadn't untwiddled it. And it will sit a little bit nicer. So I can attach that down like that. And then I'm going to get this one ready. So now I'm going to make sure that I've got this lined up. I'm going to follow, if I can, there we go, follow the line of the holes on the fabric. Turn that over, and then again I'm just going to flatten out that and stick that down. So now I've got that neatly like so, and that's on the front. Now if you want to leave your, that doesn't look too untidy to have that, but here's an extra step you could do if you wanted to cover that. You could cut a square of pattern paper and then you could glue that inside, and that would make it even neater and would cover those ends. Just adds another nice little finishing touch as well. And if you want to add a bow to the front with your twine, here's another little trick. I just pre-tie my bow and then I can stick it on wherever I want, rather than trying to tie it around the twine, because that just gets really awkward. And you can decide if I want it up there, or maybe I think probably down there. And then all I'll do is just attach it with a little bit of PVA glue. On top, and now that will sit in place, and I haven't had to faff trying to tie it around the twine that's already on the front of the card. And there we are, a lovely selection of patched greeting cards. And of course you can mix and match up all these extra little elements that I've shown you. You can use all of them together if you like. So I hope you enjoyed those ideas and are feeling inspired to go and make your own gorgeous greeting cards. Let me know in the comments which was your favourite finishing idea. And if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more tutorials like this and lots more stitchy advice and tips as well. Thanks for watching and happy stitching.